the only temple with an image, well, there are two, one Digambara and one Shvetambara, on the slopes of the hill, sort of lower, clearly of lower significance. This is the Jal Mandir, which also, of course, houses the image of Parshvanatha, the main focus of the pilgrimage to Sammeta Śikhara, with the Naga. And, I mean, it's a very beautiful site. And I just run through a number of pictures here. This is the main focus. Well, it's officially the main focus within the Parshvanatha Tong on top. And you can see the Paduka here shows the foot imprint, as it were, from the view below. And this indicates the Digambara Paduka. The Shvetambaras show the view from top, you see the toes basically. And this is one of the main claims the Digambaras make, that they actually are in charge historically of this. And there are many court cases citing on this. Collection boxes side by side. Now the most sacred spot, if one can talk about that, is actually underneath that shrine in a cave. And this is supposed to be the real footprint of Parshvanatha. And one can easily miss it actually, but obviously people know. And again, it shows a Digambara style Paduka. Right. A few remarks on Jeevanodhara renovation. Ferguson made this interesting remark which shows that actually the absence of archaeological remnants can be explained by certain practices of the Jains. No one knows how old the pilgrimage site actually is. The way the Jainas, set about it generally, renovation, consists in covering up the whole of the outside of some side structure with a thick coating of chunam, filling up and hiding all the details and leaving only the outline. Interior is generally adorned with repeated coats of whitewash as destructive to artistic effect, but not so irreparable. The plan and the outline are generally, however, left as they were originally erected. Basically, people broke down the old structures or the remnants thereof. There's a lot of lightning on top of the mountains, and the temples, the tombs are actually destroyed physically, frequently. And then they use these materials and build some new structures. So actually, there are no archaeological remnants. And you can see an old picture here of the Parshvanatha tomb. It looks completely different. And the Jal Mandir in the middle, of course. I run very quickly through a number of points here which have been discussed in the courts. You can see these are all from court cases. And actually this emerged as part of two projects, my interest in this. And one was the Jaina Law Project, because the battle over the control of sacred sites is a key factor in Jain legal activity. And a lot of religious arguments are discussed in the courts. It's very, very interesting. Of course, usually they're just cited from a lawyer's point of view, not from a scholar's point of view. That means you have to win the argument, not prove the truth. But interesting material which gives us some insight. And the other project was the one on Jain stupas, of which there is a short report in this newsletter. So there are two types of Chana Padukas, as we already saw. This is the Shvetambara one, and a lot of literature on this, historical stuff. And this I can only mention in passing. You see some dates. The first really firm date we have is 1592, when Hiranujaya Suri apparently was given a farman by Akbar, I think it was at the time of Akbar, yes, which gave him control over the site. It was, of course, royal property, as it were. And from then on, it's relatively clear that the main controllers, as it were, of the management were based in Murshidabad in Bengal, famous Jagat Sets. And here you see just some of the evidence of this. So Calcutta and Murshidabad were the centers. Originally they came from Rajasthan, of course. The Digambar said, even if they're in charge of the management, they are, of course, not, they cannot prohibit Digambars to visit this site, which is acknowledged by both sects. And this is the person, I think, still in charge of it, Mr. Rampuria Singhi, currently. And here are a lot of court cases. I could go into this. Just a list of the main issues: possession, use, exercise, mode of worship, donations, control of the natural resources, and constructions, etc. The function of infinite litigation, which goes on for 100 years now, is obviously not to win the case, but to prolong the process. And this is well known from other contexts as well. Just to give you an impression, very, very briefly, about some of the key judgments. The hill is not a property of the Jain deities. It was decided in 1933. To what extent deities can be in charge of actual owners is an interesting issue. It's well known. All these claims have been made by Jains in the courts. Then the debate between definition of sacred spots, is the entire mountain sacred or just the footprints? Are the sacred spots the real ones, or are they just conventional symbols? And other issues. Sacred spots are unknown, which is quite obvious. Only tradition has fixed it on one or other item. Legally, only the hilltop is sacred. That point was made as well. And a recent objection, well, I don't read this, we have no time for this. The current legal status is basically that the government of Jharkhand has taken over control because the Jains were fighting in the courts so much, so they've lost control now, basically. But who manages the site is still an issue because the government will not manage it. And so it continues. Now I want to focus finally on this appeal, recent appeal by Darshanaben. It's about government control and so on, because she cites as an argument the quality of the mountain as a relic of use, and the function of relics basically determining the power and sacredness of a Jain site. In so doing, we don't go into that, so the learned High Court proceeded on the erroneous basis that it was only these tombs, shrines and charans situated at the top of Parshnath Hill in an area of 0.86 acres that was sacred, in spite of both the Shvetambars and the Digambars agreeing as to the sanctity of the Parshnath Hill as a whole, and the same position also enjoying widespread scriptural sanction. A copy of some of the scriptures that testify as to the religious sanctity of the said hill is annexed herewith. And I just cite one, the Annexure P5, extracts from the religious scriptures, establishing the positive effect of the mortal remains of the Tirthankaras. And this is the Trishashti Shalaka Purusha Charitra, where, as everyone knows, you find the story of the tooth and the other bones of Rishabha and Mahavira being transported to the heavens by the gods and worshipped there, and so on and so forth.